Hello, English learners. Welcome to another episode of Your English Always Better. Hey Jennifer, how are you doing?
Hi Charlie, I'm great. Thank you. How about you?
I'm doing very well, thanks. Jennifer, today we're going to talk about a fundamental topic for anyone learning English: ways of introducing yourself and others.
Exactly, Charlie. Knowing how to introduce yourself and others is essential for creating good first impressions and starting relationships, whether in social or professional contexts.
That's right. Let's start by talking about how to introduce yourself. In informal situations, you can simply say hi, I'm your name, or hello, my name is your name.
And in more formal situations, you can use good morning/afternoon/evening. I'm your name, or pleased to meet you. I'm your name.
Great, Jennifer. And when we're introducing other people? How do we do that?
Well, in informal situations, you can say something like, hey, name, this is my friend, name, or name, I'd like you to meet, name.
And in more formal contexts?
In formal situations, you can use phrases like Mr./Ms., last name, may I introduce, name, or I'd like to introduce you to, name.
Excellent. It's important to remember that in many English-speaking cultures, it's common to use first names, even in professional situations, unless indicated otherwise.
That's right, Charlie. But it's always good to be aware of the context and hierarchy. When in doubt, it's better to be more formal initially.
In the next segment, we'll give practical examples of different introduction situations. Stay tuned.
That's right, Charlie. We'll explore everyday scenarios and provide useful phrases for each situation.
Well, Jennifer, let's start with a common scenario: meeting someone at an informal party.
Great idea, Charlie. In that situation, you can simply approach and say, hi there. I'm Jennifer. What's your name? And the other person might respond, nice to meet you, Jennifer. I'm Charlie. Then, you can continue the conversation with something like, so, Charlie, how do you know the host?
That's right. It's always good to have a few questions ready to keep the conversation flowing. Now, how about a more formal scenario, like a business conference? In that case, you might introduce yourself by saying, hello, I'm Charlie Smith from XYZ Company. It's a pleasure to meet you. And then offer a handshake.
Excellent example. And if you want to exchange business cards, you can say, may I give you my business card? Or would you mind if we exchanged business cards?
Great point, Jennifer. Now, let's talk about how to introduce other people. Let's say you're at a social event and want to introduce two friends. In this case, you might say something like, hey Sarah, I'd like you to meet my friend Tom. Tom, this is Sarah. We work together at the marketing agency.
Perfect. And it's always good to add a detail or two about each person to help start a conversation. For example, Sarah is an amazing graphic designer, and Tom here is a brilliant software engineer. Now, what if you're in a more formal situation, like introducing a new coworker to your boss?
Good question. In that scenario, you might say, Mr. Johnson, I'd like to introduce you to Jane Smith, our new marketing specialist. Jane, this is Mr. Johnson, our CEO. And remember, in professional situations, it's always better to use titles and last names until told otherwise. Now, how about we talk about some potentially challenging situations? For example, what if you forget someone's name?
Oh, that happens to all of us. In that case, it's best to be honest. You can say something like, I'm so sorry. We've met before, but I've forgotten your name. Could you remind me, please? Most people understand and appreciate honesty. Now, what if you don't catch someone's name when you're introduced?
Good question. You can politely ask the person to repeat, "I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch your name. Could you say it again, please?" Or if it's a difficult name, you might ask, "Would you mind spelling that for me?" Now, let's talk about some useful expressions for different introduction situations.
Great idea. To start a conversation after an introduction, you can use phrases like, "So, what brings you to this event? How long have you been working in this field? What do you think of the conference so far?"
Excellent suggestions. And to politely end a conversation, you might say, "It was great meeting you. I hope we can talk again soon. I should probably let you go, but it was a pleasure chatting with you. I need to run, but please, take my card and let's keep in touch."
Perfect, Charlie. Now, how about we address some cultural differences in introductions? For example, in many English-speaking countries, it's common to give a firm handshake when introducing yourself. But in some places, like Japan, a bow is more appropriate. And in some European countries, it's common to give cheek kisses when introducing yourself, while in others that would be considered too informal.
Good point. It's always important to research local customs a bit before traveling or doing international business. Now, how about we talk about group introductions? In a team meeting, for example, you might say, "Let's go around the table and introduce ourselves. Please state your name and role in the project."
And at a networking event, you might introduce yourself to a group by saying, "Hi everyone, mind if I join you? I'm Jennifer, I work in marketing at ABC Company." And remember, when joining a group, it's polite to ask permission first. Now, how about we talk about dealing with names that are difficult to pronounce?
Good idea. If you're not sure how to pronounce someone's name, it's perfectly acceptable to ask, "I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Could you say it for me again, please?"
Exactly. And if your own name is difficult to pronounce, you can help by offering a simplified pronunciation or a nickname. For example, "My name is Joaquin, but you can call me Joe." It's also important to know some idiomatic expressions related to introductions. Shall we talk about them? For example, to break the ice means to start a conversation in a potentially uncomfortable social situation.
And to put someone on the spot means to place someone in an uncomfortable or embarrassing situation, something we should avoid when making introductions. Another useful expression is to hit it off, which means that two people got along well immediately after being introduced.
Great expressions. Now, let's give some final tips to our listeners. First, always try to remember and use the person's name after being introduced. This helps to remember the name and shows that you're paying attention.
Great advice. Second, maintain eye contact and smile during introductions. This helps create a good first impression. Third, always have some questions or conversation topics in mind to avoid awkward silences after the initial introduction. And last but not least, practice. The more you introduce yourself and others, the more natural and confident you'll feel.
Excellent, Charlie. I hope our listeners found these tips and examples useful. Remember, learners, that the key to good introductions is being polite, clear, and genuinely interested in the people you're meeting.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid of making mistakes. Most people appreciate the effort of trying to communicate in another language. Remember, practice makes perfect. Go out there, meet new people, and practice these introduction skills. You'll be surprised at how quickly you can improve.
Exactly, Charlie. Often, we make mistakes that can create a bad impression or even offend someone unintentionally. Let's discuss 5 common errors and how to avoid them. Let's start with the first mistake, using incorrect pronouns of address. Many people have difficulty knowing when to use Mr., Mrs., Miss, or Ms.
For example, calling a married woman Miss can be considered disrespectful. It's best to use Ms. when you're not sure of the marital status, or simply use the first name if you're in a more informal setting. The second common mistake is mispronouncing names. It's crucial to make an effort to pronounce people's names correctly, especially in a first meeting.
I completely agree, Charlie. If you're not sure about the pronunciation, don't hesitate to ask politely. For example, you can say, "Could you please help me pronounce your name correctly?" This shows respect and interest in the person. The third mistake that many people make is using overly informal language in professional situations. It's important to adapt the level of formality to the context. For instance, in a job interview, saying, "Hey, what's up?" to the interviewer would be inappropriate. It's better to opt for a "good morning/afternoon. It's a pleasure to meet you."
Well remembered, Jennifer. The fourth error we'd like to address is the excessive use of slang or regional expressions, especially when speaking with people from different cultural backgrounds. This can really cause confusion. For example, if an American says "I'm feeling blue" to someone who isn't familiar with this expression, the person might not understand that it means feeling sad or depressed.
It's always better to use more neutral and clear language in intercultural situations. The fifth and final mistake we'll discuss today is interrupting the other person while they're speaking. This is a very common and annoying error. Often, people are so eager to share their ideas that they end up cutting off the other person's speech. This can be seen as rude and disrespectful.
Exactly. Instead of interrupting, it's better to wait for a natural pause in the conversation or use body language to indicate that you'd like to speak, such as slightly raising your hand.
Great advice, Charlie. Now, let's recap the 5 mistakes we discussed today. Using incorrect pronouns of address, mispronouncing names, using overly informal language in professional situations, overusing slang or regional expressions, and interrupting others.
Perfect, Jennifer. Remember, listeners, that the key to good communication is always respect and empathy. Pay attention to the tips we shared today and practice them in your daily interactions.
Exactly, Charlie. And don't forget that making mistakes is part of the learning process. The important thing is to be aware of these common errors and make a conscious effort to improve.
That's it, dear English learners. If this content was useful to you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Write in the comments about what kind of topics you want us to make videos about to help you learn English. Stay tuned until the end of the video to see suggestions for other podcasts that will help you improve your English level. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next videos.